No, very, very quick turnover now to introduce Holly Brown. Holly is heading up our presence in Adelaide, is one of our staff members down there, and is a GRC analyst.
Cool. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to start off by getting a show of hands around who's thought of what they'll be doing in 2030. Put your hand up. Got one at the back there, one here. Fantastic. Okay, there's not many. Let's get a show of hands. Has anyone thought about what their organisation might be doing in 2030? Any hands? One down here. Another one at the back there. That's good. All right. Has anyone thought about what the cybersecurity industry might be doing in 2030? Yeah, again, only a few hands. Okay, that's good, because I'm here to talk about a topic, or I guess a little thought journey that I went on when I read a book, and it took me to what the Australian economy and Australian society will look like into the 2030s and the 2040s, and subsequently what that means for us as cybersecurity professionals. So that book was, as you can see up on the screen there, Superpower, Australia's Low Carbon Opportunity. That's written by Emeritus Professor Ross Garnaut. So he's out of ANU and University of Melbourne. He's a professor in economics, and he works on a lot of economic modelling and economic policy for the Australian government, particularly around renewable energy and climate change. So I was reading this book around Easter of 2021, up on the banks of the River Murray, where I go on holiday around Easter every year. And to me, there was 4 key themes that I think really came through in this book. So the first one is the cost of transitioning to renewables. That's kind of one of the first key things he discusses around time frames, so the cost of transitioning now versus in the future, and what that's going to mean for society more broadly. With that, he also speaks to the impact of climate change and what that's going to mean for Australia, and also the Indo-Pacific, where Australia inhabits. Coupled with that, and the key driver with that impact of climate change, was the need to transition to renewables. So looking at those impacts and how we need to mitigate them by reducing our emissions of CO2 and methane, so those greenhouse gases, to kind of try and reduce those impacts that are coming our way. A fourth point that he discusses, which is really, really key, is that the economic opportunity Australia has in embracing renewables. We're uniquely positioned in the globe with an abundance of renewable energy, primarily wind and solar. So Professor Garnaut talks about what's to be gained by transitioning to renewables. So I was reading this book and I was thinking, wow, this is a bit of a different future we're going to see. We're looking at like a real evolution of society and the economy. And I thought to myself, what does the average Australian day in the life of the average Australian look like? And what I kind of came up with, I thought there's 3 key factors that we're going to see. So the first one is that the electricity grid is going to be powered primarily by renewable energy. So they're talking about that wind and solar, which we have an abundance of. Other technologies we might see come into that as well, so things like hydro, wave technology is another one. I know there's been discussions lately in the media about bringing things like nuclear. I'm not going to comment on the feasibility of that or society in general's opinion on that, but hey, that's what we're looking at. So we've got an electricity grid primarily powered by renewable energy. Secondly, our economy and society is going to become increasingly dependent on that electricity grid. So if you look at your average home, I know in my house I've got a gas stove, gas hot water is another one. People have gas heating, that's all going to move out. Electric counterparts are going to come in. Even things like wood fire heaters are going out of fashion. The government in Canberra, so the ACT government, has brought out a policy that they'll be phased out in over the coming decades. The third point is that we're going to become an increasingly digitally based society. Now, I'm in a room here of IT professionals and cybersecurity professionals, so I don't need to harp on about that too much. So we're looking at things, like AI, gets spoken about a lot. Quantum computing is another one that comes in. But to me, it's more simple than that. It's how we do business. It's, you go to work every day and you open up your laptop and that's how you run it. All your money is done on, online banking. It can be even more simple than that. You go to a restaurant these days and you ask for the menu and they give you a QR code and ask you to scan that. So we're becoming really, really, a really digitally based society. So I also just want to comment on my second point about the economy and society becoming increasingly dependent on the electricity grid. A key part of that is transport. So your mind probably goes there to electric vehicles, so you're not going to a service station anymore and filling up with 91 unleaded, or maybe 98, or maybe diesel, depending what your vehicle runs on. Instead, you'll be going home and plugging your car in into the mains, right? I've got a picture up there, and that's of a train, and that train is in my home city of Adelaide, and what we've been doing in the past, decade is electrifying the network. And we're going to see things like buses, trams already electrified, but things will become a lot more electrified. So three things there: electricity grid powered by renewables, an economy and society increasingly dependent on the grid, and an increasingly digitally based society. And this is where I kind of put my cybersecurity hat on, and I thought, wow, that electricity grid is becoming very, very valuable. I wonder if some threat actors might be out there thinking that's a very valuable piece of utility to the Australian economy. They're very dependent on it in society. And what if a threat actor was able to bring that down? So what if they were able to implant some, let's say malware or ransomware or whatever, into that system and bring that down? What would that mean for the Australian economy and this Australian society in general? Now at the moment, there's two ways that blackouts tend to happen. Either something fries itself or something falls over. I've lived through, I think, two rather intense blackouts where both of those have happened. In 2019, I was in Manhattan and I was walking with my brother, and we were on the way to see a show on Broadway. And as we were walking, the entirety of Manhattan went into blackout. Something somewhere had fried, and the whole island lost power. So aside from, obviously the Broadway show being cancelled, which was a bit of a bummer, but there was people stuck in lifts. The subway, people using that for transport, there was issues with that. Traffic became chaotic, so there's no traffic lights. I have a very distinct memory of just a gentleman on the side, on their footpath, who just seemed to be, general member of the public, decided to walk out into the traffic and start directing it. And then someone drove past in their truck and dropped him a fluorescent bib. So obviously he wouldn't get hit by a car. So that's one where something fried. Second one where I lived through where something fell over was in 2016. South Australia was hit by quite a large storm. And what they did is knock down a few towers over in the mid-north. And what we saw there was that the entire state went into blackout. So at that time I was working close to Adelaide CBD, and I was living in the outer southern suburbs, so about an hour transit on a good day. And I had to get home from work in this storm with no power, so there's no traffic lights. The whole place is a mess with the severe weather we're experiencing. And then back to a house that had no power, and it was not a fun place to be at the time. I was very grateful to have my 60 Series Land Cruiser, which I was driving along in. So that's blackouts now. Not fun, not a good time. We don't enjoy them. Let's think of the blackouts of the future when those three factors that I spoke about before come into play. And I want to frame that through, again, the life of the average Australian. So they get up to go to work, probably need to get the kids to school. They can get up, they've probably got some food in the fridge they can eat or whatever, that's not too bad, or cereal or whatever. Getting up, they want to go to school or work. If they own an electric vehicle and it's been plugged in and it runs, then they can probably drive there It's not probably going to be too safe with, talking there about traffic lights being down. Say they can get to, if they rely on public transport, then, they're probably not getting anywhere. If they can get to school or work, is it even a safe environment to be in? Something simple as lighting can make a building quite unsafe. What we're really going to see there is that those first 24 hours, with something that we're so reliable on being gone, it's going to become very uncomfortable. What if that goes on for 48 hours? What if that goes on for 72? What if that goes on for a week? I think calling it uncomfortable would probably be a little bit of an understatement. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking like, yeah, that's all well and good. That seems pretty scary. But what does this have to do with me? And what does that have to do with my organisation? I'm not sitting here as an executive for AGL or Origin. Why do I even need to think about this? And for that, I'd like to use probably like a little bit of an analogy or a side story, I guess. Australia in the past 10 years has seen an abundance of natural disasters. And the Red Cross has run a survey, and this was reported on the ABC about 6 weeks ago, is that fewer than 20% of Australians have an emergency kit ready for those natural disasters. Fewer than 10% of Australians have got a plan together in case of a natural disaster. So what I propose is we think about is how, as an organisation, do we get our emergency kit and our emergency plan together for things like loss of energy, so looking there at energy resilience. So does that look like, investing in solar panels, popping them on the roof with a lithium battery? Potentially. Does it look like writing policies and procedures to deal with long-term loss of power? Probably too. Now, I'm not going to stand up here and tell you exactly what you need to do, what your organisation has to do, because I don't know what all your organisations do. But for me, I think there's 4 key areas that you need to look at. One is third-party risk management. What vulnerabilities arise from my use of third parties? Second is supply chain risks. Who am I reliant on to get up to run day to day? And if they go down, what happens to me? And with that as well, it's also good to think about who's reliant on me, and if I go down, what happens to them? Number 3, disaster recovery. So how do I get up and moving in the case of a disaster? So we're talking about significant loss of power. And in the 4th area, tied in with the disaster recovery, is business continuity planning. So we get up and running with our disaster recovery plan, and we keep on going. So really what I want to leave you on here is that I think if we all get our emergency kits and our emergency plans ready for this, for scenarios like what I've outlined here, with this threat actor taking down the grid, if we get those plans and get those kits ready, then that threat actor who comes and performs that malicious act might not have the impact that they intend. Cool. Thank you very much.